How long are you going to stay in this house? Hurry up and take your ugly child and leave.
You can say whatever you want about me, but I don't want you calling my daughter ugly. I thought I made it clear that I didn't want to live in a house unsuitable for raising children, and yet my husband and mother-in-law came to visit us and begged for help. Stop being so demanding. Seriously. If you keep saying whatever you want, my scary princess will blow up. My name is Bia, and I'm 43 years old. My daughter already scolded me for not gently letting the lotion soak into my skin, saying my beauty standards are too low. I mean, I used to put in effort when I was younger, but as you get older, you can't even admit that using lotion feels like a hassle, right? Let's talk about memories with my beauty-conscious daughter. When my daughter was 5, I was living with my husband's parents because my husband's father had passed away, and his visually impaired mother couldn't live alone. She begged to live with my sister-in-law instead, but she refused. Living with my mother-in-law like that was never going to work out. She thinks of me, a stay-at-home mom, as a slacker or something. She doesn't even bother to make breakfast or lunch herself, just orders me to do it. And that's not all. She demands massages, to fetch tissues from the table, to make coffee or tea all day long. But I'm a mother desperate to take care of my 5-year-old daughter. I'm never idle. If my child has a fever, I'm there for her, and if she suddenly starts crying, I listen. My life revolves around my daughter, so I can't fulfill all of my mother-in-law's demands, but I can't let that bother me, and I just accept it as inevitable. In the first place, apart from her bad eyesight, my mother-in-law is healthy, and the doctor says using a cane and actively walking is good for her body. So honestly, as an adult, I thought she would move around for her own health. But apparently, my selfish mother-in-law took issue with my thinking. My husband Billy ignored me and reported something outrageous. It seems that if my mother-in-law's requests are not met, she considers it being ignored. I can't take it anymore. Of course, I protested to my husband, but he sided with his mother.
It's your fault you can't balance taking care of my mother and your child.
So naturally, I thought he should try doing the same thing. At first, I held back my dissatisfaction with my husband's words, but my mother-in-law's selfish demands didn't stop. Finally, I argued. Your mom's only problem is her legs, right? Why do I have to get everything from tissues to the remote control off the table? I'm not your mom's slave. My mother-in-law fiercely countered, trying desperately to justify her words.
That's not it. It's because you lack kindness.
My husband, seeming fed up with the interaction between us, suddenly snapped and blamed everything on me.
It's your fault.
My mother-in-law, with a victorious face, acted as if I were the only one at fault, while my husband sighed, asking why can't we all just get along.
If you're going to complain about me, why don't you try doing either the housework or the childcare before you complain about me?
I don't care anymore.
He slammed the door shut, disappearing into the bedroom. My mother-in-law looked at me as if to say,
Now you see?
And it's extremely unpleasant. Why do I have to be painted as the villain? I don't know if it's sadness or frustration. After giving my daughter a bath, I didn't want to return to the same bedroom as my husband that day, so I slept alone. The next morning, I greeted my husband coming down from the second-floor bedroom with a big smile and a good morning. It's better not to drag out fights, right? But my husband ignored me. He would say things like,
You hate me,
while also resembling my mother-in-law. Even my daughter asked him,
Daddy, what's wrong?
But she also got ignored. For about a month from that day, my daughter and I were ignored by my husband. At first, I thought, he'll come around soon anyway, but as the situation continued, I eventually stopped talking to him. The word divorce kept popping into my head, but I worried about what would happen if my daughter heard people bad-mouthing her at kindergarten because her parents divorced, or what would happen when she grew up. However, by ignoring my daughter and me, my husband seemed to think he was superior to me like his mother. He started hurling even more insults at me than before. Ever since my daughter said,
"Don't be mean to Mommy,"
it seems like he's treating her as an enemy too. Every time I'm in his sight, he lets out a deliberate sigh and gives off a bad vibe. He often looks down on me, and while my daughter hasn't directly heard his insults, she seems to sense that she's not liked by her grandmother, and her smiles have diminished.
You gave birth to an ugly child because your blood is dirty.
It's not good to leave my daughter in such an environment. I guess it's divorce after all. However, I was unsure about what to do or what steps to take, and the final decision never came. And then one day, an outrageous remark came out of my mother-in-law's mouth.
"How long are you going to stay in this house with your ugly child? Get out."
Oh, really? At that moment of being insulted, I decided in my heart to leave today. I thought about staying with her father for my daughter's sake, but it would probably be better for her to not be in this kind of household. I'm not confident in my decision, but I believe it's the right thing to do. With that belief, I left the house where I had been ignored, leaving behind the divorce papers I had kept in secret. I had no one else to rely on besides my parents, but they initially said harsh things like,
You have a child. Why aren't you coming home?
making the decision to come back. However, after I told them about the events of the past month, they praised me for leaving. My daughter also seemed relieved to be in an environment with her loving grandparents. She smiled more than when she was living with my husband. I hid the fact of the divorce from her kindergarten, but, well, with my grandmother and me attending events together and my husband not being there, they noticed pretty quickly. But recently, most people just laughed and said,
There are a lot of divorced moms these days.
So none of the things I was worried about happened. I received a report from my husband that he had submitted divorce papers, and although there was some dispute over child support, the conversation went smoothly, and the new life seemed to be going smoothly. But it was 5 years after I started living with my parents. On a holiday morning, the intercom rang, and when I answered as usual, my ex-husband and mother-in-law were on the monitor for some reason. I asked in a calm tone, although there had been no contact other than child support so far. What do you want? Why are you here?
Please, come out. I have something to talk about.
We still had a connection through child support, and if he said he wanted to see our daughter, there was an obligation to comply to some extent. I couldn't say I didn't know, so I reluctantly opened the front door. Then my ex-husband and mother-in-law began to plead, begging me for help as they pressed their foreheads against the doorstep.
I'm sorry, but I need your help.
As I wondered what was going on, my 10-year-old daughter appeared from inside and muttered,
"Is it about the article?"
Ah, that incident. I thought to myself and simply said, Oh.
Please, retract the article, Bia.
Hell, no way. I flatly refused my husband's plea.
What's that supposed to mean?
My husband momentarily froze, then appealed to our daughter.
I'm being persecuted at work because of what you said. Why didn't you tell me you were modeling?
As soon as our daughter entered elementary school, she started taking dance lessons. She had a decent sense of rhythm, and as she participated in various competitions, she caught the eye of a scout from a modeling agency. Currently, she's modeling for children's fashion magazines and online shopping sites, although her fame is still relatively low. Recently, our daughter won back-to-back titles in a major dance competition for elementary school students. Then the modeling agency started using the media, saying, This is a chance to promote our model, and our daughter began appearing on local news programs. One of these appearances was for an interview in a certain online article. In the article, when asked, Who do you respect the most? My daughter answered,
My mom, because even though she's been treated badly by Dad and Grandma, she's worked hard to protect me and raise me.
Moreover, although the content of the article could have been edited normally, the modeling agency decided it wasn't a bad idea to sell the story of a girl who had overcome adversity with her brave efforts. As a result, our daughter was praised for being raised in a single-parent household and being a hard-working girl who admired her mother. But secretly, articles circulated online labeling her as the child of a heartless father who abandoned them. Although my daughter and I were aware that my husband and his family were causing controversy, we didn't do anything because it was the truth. But to think he's been persecuted at work. Well, let's just say, oops. His boss even said that even if the boss was a woman, they couldn't trust someone like him with a job.
Please, tell them that the article is a lie or something.
I'm begging you to. If we keep going like this, your dad will end up being demoted.
My husband and mother-in-law continued to beg desperately to my young daughter and me.
Demoted? You mean he won't have a job anymore?
My mother-in-law looked a little troubled.
Oh, do you not understand what I'm saying? It means something like being made to work in a place where nobody sees you. Well then, that's fine, right? You'll still have a job, don't you? There's no problem.
My husband and mother-in-law were left speechless by my daughter's nonchalant attitude.
Huh? No, I mean, hey, Cyril, when a guy is demoted, it's hard for him to stay in the company, you know?
But if you have determination, you can make it somehow.
My daughter's perseverance in the face of adversity got to me. And by the way, with this determination, I can somehow manage. This is something my daughter's been told by her dance instructor during practice. My husband and mother-in-law seemed taken aback by my daughter's words. My husband, seemingly thinking that negotiating directly wouldn't work, after a brief pause, suggested,
If you don't want to retract the article, if that's okay with you, why don't we start over?
At that absurd suggestion from my husband, I let out a disgusted voice.
Because look, if we remarry, people might think our family was actually close, or maybe that the husband had reflected on his actions because of the article, right?
Isn't that ridiculous? Why would I think of remarrying such a man with obvious ulterior motives? Feelings come later, even to my thick-headed husband, who earnestly talks about the benefits of reconciliation. Has this guy's brain melted over the past 5 years? His IQ is probably lower than my daughter's now. My mother-in-law conceded in my decision to go against my husband's nonsensical proposal.
There's nothing we can do.
Before I knew it, my parents came up from behind, and my daughter, who had been watching us, let out a slightly annoyed sigh.
You can tell them what you were just told in some interview.
My husband and mother-in-law were not amused. In fact, they seemed to be in a bind over my father's unexpected suggestion.
What do you think you're doing with me and Mom? We are not tools you can use to make yourself look good.
My husband and mother-in-law were at a loss for words, as they couldn't seem to even come up with this 10-year-old's argument.
There's another dance competition coming up soon, and even if we win or lose, there's an interview scheduled, so I'll just tell them everything there. I probably talked without thinking in the first interview, but if you both keep saying such terrible things, I'll tell them everything that happened today, too. That's fair, right?
Well,
seeing my husband, who looked downcast, I realized that it was impossible to rely on him and his mother anymore.
Got it.
You've become quite the admirable young lady. As a parent, I have mixed feelings about my daughter having been called ugly in the past, but now I've also acknowledged my daughter's ability to respond well. My daughter shyly replied with a joking, funny face while saying thank you, but I felt it was kind of her to smile back at her grandmother, who I knew did not think well of her. I truly think she's become an admirable child. And so my husband and mother-in-law apologized for causing us trouble and left. Later, I received word from my husband that he had quit his job. As expected, he was reassigned due to the backlash from the article. But when the department he was moved to was disbanded due to cost-cutting measures, it led to a flow that encouraged voluntary retirement, and my husband reluctantly resigned. He mentioned that finding a new job would be difficult because of the article, and he might not be able to work for a while. Well, as long as he pays child support, I don't care if he's behind on payments, but for now, if his mom will just toughen up and work, they'll have an income. Needless to say, my husband looked uncomfortable when I suggested that he cooperate, because it's unlikely that my mother-in-law will work that easily. My husband assumed that I had not forgiven him for his delayed payments, so he asked his mother to work with him, but of course, his suggestion was rejected. Instead, the relationship between them deteriorated, and since this house is in her name, he was kicked out of the house. I couldn't help but chuckle when my once assertive mother-in-law came to me and asked if she could live with us. Despite kicking her son out, it seems she's become afraid of being alone as she ages. With my husband unwilling to come back home and my sister-in-law unwilling to help, she then turned to me. But of course I politely declined. Meanwhile, I'm still happily living with my daughter and parents in my hometown. Even though I thought we should move out, my parents expressed their desire for us to stay together, saying they wanted us by their side. My daughter is attached to her grandparents, and since it's what my parents want, I chose to continue living with them. My daughter says she wants to quit modeling and become a dance instructor in the future, so she's working hard every day to make her dream come true. She's becoming cuter day by day, with a high sense of achievement from being in the public eye so often, to the point where I worry about strange bugs being attracted to her. Well, she's growing into quite the sharp-tongued girl, even more so than when I kicked her father out, so maybe the bugs will be repelled and run away instead. But the other day she was approached by a few boys.
Huh? You planning to have a harem or something?
They seemed to hesitate for a moment and then left. Well, it's better than getting involved with weird guys. Your mother once fell for a lousy husband, so be sure to learn from my mistakes. Thinking about it that way, divorce was like a good learning experience, huh? Currently, I'm working at a bakery near our house, but now that my daughter is older, the owner suggested I could handle our second location. However, there's still a need for me to polish my skills a bit more, and discussions about the second location are still in the early stages. But I was happy to know that the owner trusts me enough to consider letting me handle that. It's nice to see that hard work pays off, even in just a part-time job. I'm both thrilled and humbled because I only understood my own worth through a promotion system. If the second store really does open, I'll strive to be a manager that the owner will be glad he entrusted me with it. I'll make sure I can perfectly replicate the owner's bread before then. Our relationship as mother and daughter is harmonious, and although my daughter can be a bit sassy, she's grown into a wonderful, honest girl. People often say that children from divorced families tend to have issues, and I used to worry about trivial things like that during the divorce. But now I truly believe that divorce was the right decision. Because I feel so happy every day, wondering if life could really be this good. I truly love this kind of simple living surrounded by people that I love so much.